I was just going to ask about the minimum wage because it's a conversation that doesn't really get had. I feel that nobody really discusses it. What should the minimum wage be?
So the idea of the minimum wage for me is that it stops workers being exploited by large companies. Well, two areas: rogue companies who may be quite small and people who don't know what the income should be, and they take on a job because they're desperate. And actually, this rogue company, they don't necessarily have the information, so that can give them some protection because it's easy to see what the minimum wage should be, and a company knows they're breaking the law. But the other area is to protect against big companies who have what we call monopsony power. So they have power in the labour market to drive wages down. And if you look at sort of simple economic models, it's quite possible that you take a big company like McDonald's and that you could have a minimum wage above the sort of market level, and actually you can end up with more people being employed because the market level. It's if you increase the wage for one of your workers, you've got to increase it for everyone. So the marginal cost of doing that is actually quite high. So you keep wages low relative to how much benefit they would give you. But if you force a wage up above that sort of monopoly level, you get closer to what the sort of free market equilibrium would be if you didn't have monopoly power. And actually, it's possible that wages can go up, but also unemployment can go down. Of course, there's a limit to that. At some point, if you increase the minimum wage up to £20 an hour or £30 an hour, of course you would lose jobs. So the difficult thing for policymakers is what is the level at which that trade-off is about right? And you can't give an absolute answer to that because it's not one labour market we operate in. We have different labour markets across the country. In London, it's very different to the Northwest or the Midlands where I am, and also in different industries. So you have to be a little bit careful. If you're having a national minimum wage, it's really easy. People know what it is. I think it's a good idea, but you probably have to be a little bit cautious and say, well, what are we trying to do with this? We're trying to cut out the worst of the exploitation of vulnerable workers without losing jobs. Probably no level where you can lose no jobs, and there's no level where you can say, well, we solving that whole issue of vulnerable workers. But you have to pick a policy level, and that's beyond the level of economists. We as economists can say, well, looking across countries, these are sort of levels where you go above this area, it looks like you're losing more jobs than you, and you may want to worry about the benefits. Of course, you're putting more money into people's pockets by increasing the minimum wage. So why some of the worst concerns about the increase in the living wage in the last budget perhaps haven't come through because you're increasing spending amongst people who are on quite low incomes anyway, and that can help the economy. So that can help the pubs have been hit by the minimum wage. They've also benefited to some extent by people having more money to spend. But I think we're probably at that level where you look compared to 10, 20 years ago, it's gone up quite significantly. And, would probably, you've got to be careful before you go any further. So you can't give an absolute answer to what should it be, but you can set out the consequences in terms of jobs and poverty and so on.